So my name's Sue. I've been in crypto since late 2016, and I've been with Hut 8 since December of 2020. So we're one of North America's oldest Bitcoin miners. But in 2021, we started looking at the high performance computing, AI, machine learning space, and looking at how would that type of computing play alongside um, mining Bitcoin compute. And it's super topical right now. AI is all anything anybody wants to talk about. So we'll certainly get into that. We also have one of the highest stacks of Bitcoin of any publicly traded company, about 9,000 Bitcoin on our balance sheet. We're based in Canada. We're in the middle of a massive merger with a company out of the US. And so, yeah, super pumped to be on here today, talk about the market, talk about AI, talk about Bitcoin, and yeah, let's get into it.
Awesome, awesome. So I think the first question that we can dive into is how do mining companies generate revenue? Is there some sort of fiat-based service? Is it strictly, making money off of Bitcoin? Or are there like, some services that certain mining companies provide? What is it? How is it exactly how the revenue stream works for a mining company?
Yeah, so Bitcoin miners are instrumental in securing the Bitcoin blockchain. And so we make transaction fees. And then also a lot of miners, and we're also responsible for minting new Bitcoins into circulation. So we make money on transaction fees, and a lot of miners actually sell their Bitcoin once they mint it. So, for example, some miners can make a Bitcoin for 12 or 13 grand. And then obviously when it's trading at north of 20, it's incredibly profitable to sell that. So those are the two ways generally that Bitcoin miners make money. Hut 8's a little different because again, we've got this high performance computing side of our business, 370 clients in the cloud and co-location and now AI space. And then we also have a merger that is pending. And that merger is going to come with effectively a business line it's called managed infrastructure operations. And that's effectively like a white glove mining services offering, sort of like the WeWork, but for miners. So, we run the machines, we host the infrastructure, and that's a really interesting business. But yeah, those are some of the general ways that miners make money. So, for example, also miners were instrumental and are still instrumental in ordinals. So in Q1 alone, I believe miners made something like 59 million bucks in additional transaction fees from all the demand for ordinals on the Bitcoin network.
Sue, and speaking of ordinals, I want to kind of take it back. I want to take it back to 2014 and also 2016. Both during bear markets. During bear markets, there's always some sort of narrative in the crypto space that ends up kicking off the next cycle, right? In the 2014, 2015, 2016 bear market, we had the alternative payment options, right? Your Dashes, Moneros, XRPs, the ERC20 token standard, the ICOs, all that stuff kicked off the 2017 bull run, right? And then the cycle after that, you had DeFi, NFTs, and the metaverse. And now we have things like ordinals, right? Sort of essentially altcoins and NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain. So I wanted to know, since you've been here since the inception of the ERC20 token standard, do you see some similarities between ordinals and also when all the ERC20 tokens start to come out, all these layer ones on crypto? Do you see any similarities between the two, or do you feel that ordinals might be a bit different in the sense of community hype and things of the like?
Yeah, I think ordinals personally, I think that ordinals is really here to stay. And I think what I we love about ordinals, other than obviously, like for example, when days that ordinals have been in high demand, we've actually doubled our earned fees. So I think it was May 7th or 8th. We were just processing so many transactions and making literally double the amount of money that we normally make in a day processing transactions or minting new bitcoins on the Bitcoin network. But I think what's really unique about ordinals, and what I love about ordinals is that I think it brings even more people into the Bitcoin ecosystem, and it sort of takes Bitcoin out of this peer to peer network pigeonhole. And again, obviously it's a good thing for Bitcoin to have that. branding and whatnot and that use case, but this is just another really meaningful use case that's being built on top of it. And I think a lot of people also understand and love the fact that ordinals are being inscribed upon, again, a scarce, limited, and finite asset versus, NFTs are still relatively centralized. And, there's still quite a bit of human um, uh, centralization there. And so that's what I think is quite unique about sort of the fact that they're written on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. So yeah, I think it's unique. I think it's really interesting. I think in terms of, what was sort of reminiscent of past bull markets and the most recent bull market was definitely like the metaverse, like everyone going like meta and the metaverse, like Amex setting up shop, JP Morgan setting up offices in the metaverse. That to me was definitely like peak bull market behavior. Not saying the metaverse isn't real, but that was more reminiscent, in my opinion, of like the ICO craze of 2017, that like everything was ICO and, in 2021, everything was going to be in the metaverse versus when you actually look at user adoption in, let's say, Sandbox. Last time I looked, it was like 579 people were actually playing and using the Sandbox platform. So yeah.
So, do you see any VC money going into something like ordinals? Because I recall, quote unquote, like altcoins. People were able to execute smart contracts on Ethereum and create their own token. I mean, for many years before something like Uniswap, right? So eventually VC money came into Ethereum and started developing all these DeFi platforms. So I'm starting to see somewhat of a trend. Not sure if it's only myself, but do you see VC money investing into the ordinal space? And another reason why I ask is because I'm starting to see a lot of activity on Twitter Spaces, and quite contrary to belief, but I feel like Twitter Spaces is somewhat like Google Trends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we can circle all the way back to the Pepe craze, right? A couple of weeks
Mm-hmm.
ago, if you typed in Pepe on Twitter Spaces, you would see all these rooms with hundreds, if not thousands, of people. And when you type in ordinals on the little space tab on Spaces, sometimes you'll see rooms with hundreds of people. Sometimes these rooms will go on for hours and hours. I know Trevor from the Bitcoin Frontier Fund has done that, on occasion throughout the week for months now. And the social analytics of that, typically, if they keep on during this down period in the market, right, eventually during a bull market, it'll just pop off if the consistency, remains. And, I'm kind of wondering, what if VC money comes in and then all the quote unquote Web3 marketing agencies jump on board? How is the ordinal space going to look like? And, to me, it sort of gives the case of, all right, what's going to take Bitcoin to, over $100,000? And I think ordinals is definitely a huge proponent of that. And yeah, would love to know your thoughts on that, given that, I'm sure you guys at Hut 8 Mining speak to VCs all the time.
Yeah. So look, again, from a miner perspective, we're super bullish on ordinals because again, we can double our income on in a single day when ordinals are high in demand. I think a lot of Bitcoin maxis definitely don't like it because it does also cause, network congestion and obviously higher fees. But again, I think it's been really interesting to see some of the like the BRC20 token standard come up. And I did see actually an article and I had a conversation. I can't recall which fund it was a couple weeks ago, but they were looking at funding a gaming project, an NFT gaming like game that was built or somewhat related to the BRC20 token standards. So, but is super VC demand here yet? No, I would say, well, at least not to my knowledge. Although, like to your point, what is coming up though are potentially some catalysts for uptick in demand. One in particular is that the US, I believe it's on the 13th or 14th, is releasing whether or not they're going to do another interest rate rise. And right now, consensus is that about 77% think that they're not going to raise rates, that they're going to hold them steady, and that this could be the beginning of rates going back down. Why am I referencing that? Because when rates are going back down, usually risk appetite for higher risk assets like cryptos comes back on. VCs get more comfortable investing. The insties start looking at the space again because everyone's ready to go risk on once rates come back down. So I think in general, for more of the institutional and the VC money that's been sitting on the sidelines in this rising rate environment, I think if we see rates taper or again just sort of hold steady this Wednesday or Thursday, that we could see another sort of uptick in major demand and interest in looking at this asset class from the normies and the trad fi guys, which I think will be interesting.
So a bit on the topic of rates and all that stuff. Do you believe that this is going to be the last rate hike that the Fed does? And do you believe that they'll cut at the end of the year? That's what the market is currently pricing in at the moment.
I mean, look, I'd love for them to cut at the end of the year. I am being held hostage in a terrible variable rate mortgage right now. And I think what's really interesting and what I'd love, what I'm not reading enough rhetoric on is one of the problems and what's different about this market, because everyone's looking at employment, right? And we're still seeing quote unquote low or record low levels of employment, and that's also because during the pandemic we had a huge tranche of baby boomers retire, and so naturally that would leave a hole in the labor market. And so I think that, if the Fed is going to finally factor that dynamic into their thinking, I think we probably will start to see a more tapering environment, just because, a lot of the other factors and numbers that people are looking at are starting to come down. But I mean, who knows? Who knows, right? Like if we've got another energy crisis on our hands, then no, probably not. But I'm not quite sure, but that's sort of what's percolating in my brain on it.
So this is a great conversation. Thank you for the interesting dialect. We have Will's outlook here. I don't want to overtake the conversation, and I understand that we only have about an hour with you guys. So Will's outlook, go on ahead. And Sue, I sent another invite to the Hut 8 mining profile. I'm not sure if they're on desktop, but yeah, hopefully they can join on up here. Would love to speak to them and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm the one who reps Hut 8 here, but yeah, we'll figure it out. But yeah, let's talk to Will.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, so I was just kind of catching part of the conversation. Obviously, Twitter Spaces has continuous issues, so every time I came up as a speaker, it was making it so I couldn't hear you too, unfortunately. So I only caught about half of what you said there. Um, but yeah, so I don't know. There's a lot of things. I agree with you on the ordinals thing. I think the ordinals thing is here to stay. But I also think, in a way, that metaverse is a thing too, and I think there's a lot of things that will factor into the next bull market. It's kind of like if you think about it, keep in mind when people are sitting there talking about the metaverse and it just kind of never came to fruition. The same thing happened with NFTs initially. NFTs initially in 17, people thought was just like a little, end of cycle thing that people were getting into, and it would never turn into anything. And now it's one of the biggest things out there. Um, so I think there's always room for growth in a lot of these sectors and stuff like that. One of the bigger ones I've been looking at is like on-chain gaming and stuff like that, Web3 gaming. I think that's kind of a space that a lot of people are ignoring too. But kind of to the macro conversation, like I think there's potential for upside where we are. Um, I just want to kind of feed into that too. Um, the only issue is like the inversion. I didn't know. I wanted to get your opinion on the yield inversion, or if you knew anything about that as far as from your understanding.
No, you know what? I actually don't know much about that project.
Oh, sorry. No, I meant the 2 and the 10, the yield inversion between the bonds market.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were you cut out there on my end. Yeah, again, I don't know, guys. Like, I don't know. Honestly, I don't have a good answer for you just because there's so many different factors at play. And again, I think the real tipping point for figuring out where the rest of this year is going to go, in my opinion, is going to be seen on Wednesday and Thursday when we figure out what the next move is of the Fed. Because again, if they hold rates steady, that's going to be just off to the races. I think markets are going to really, really take off then.
Yeah, I feel like the market's been taking any type of headwind and just using it as an opportunity to bid. I'm just kind of curious of like whether or not it'll end up being a scenario where if we don't get a rate hike, where the market kind of pauses and takes a breath, right, and then tries to make a decision from direction from there. That's kind of my biggest headwind on the upcoming FOMC situation.
Yeah, I think.
Dow, go on ahead, brother.
Hey guys, great conversation so far. Great to have you on the panel, Sue. Hey, I'm really interested in what you guys are working on because I'm not super familiar with the Bitcoin ecosystem. I don't necessarily think of builders when I think of the Bitcoin ecosystem, but it's great to have you here. By the way, when you mentioned 9,000 Bitcoin, I had to look that up because I know it was a big number, but I didn't realize it. It's actually 9,265 Bitcoin. So that's almost $250 million worth of
That's
Bitcoin.
right.
So congrats on that. That's quite a massive number. But I'd love to have your take on the vision that you see for the Bitcoin ecosystem, right? There's a lot of things at play. You guys talked about ordinals, and I think that's exciting. You mentioned the BRC20, that's exciting. But there's also Lightning Network, for example, right? And there's also other layer twos, or kind of similar to what we have in the Ethereum ecosystem. I think there's like ZKs that are being built as well. Um, are there things that you would say you're very bullish on, and some that you say you're a bit less bullish? I know you don't want to necessarily say negative things about any project, but let's say, for example, it comes to scalability and just innovation. What do you think are the most exciting things in the Bitcoin ecosystem you can share with
Yeah,
us?
so I think Lightning Network for sure is one of the most exciting things in the Bitcoin ecosystem, just because it is solving for a lot of the scalability issues that is preventing a lot of the adoption of Bitcoin globally. So, for example, one of the things that Lightning really solves for, and we're already seeing this start to take off, is in Africa. So, one of the problems in Africa is that a lot of the countries there are still built, their financial systems are still built on legacy colonial infrastructure. So a lot of entrepreneurs or like major corporations, if they're trying to do any transaction, like major transaction, it first has to settle overseas in Europe, which is whack. There is a plethora of innovation and brilliant people in Africa who again are being handcuffed by this antiquated legacy infrastructure. And this is where the Lightning Network comes in. So for example, right now there are over 2,000 sort of alternative payment networks that have been built in Africa, but only 2% of them actually talk to each other. And then you have a lot of apps that are actually using the Lightning Network to help integrate all of these, like these thousands of payment networks, and effectively give more mobility and financial mobility for some of the tremendous like and innovative minds and entrepreneurs there. Because again, it's real-time settlement, like for almost for pennies on the dollar, if that. And so I think yeah, Lightning Network is extremely interesting, very bullish on that. Yeah, that's a real use case that I'm pretty excited about.
Sue, one thing that I know you wanted to bring up was AI in the mining markets, and we'll get back to you. I just want to touch upon this with Sue. I know we have some limited time here, and I know that's something that she wanted to touch upon. So, Sue, why don't you tell us what are the benefits of having artificial intelligence in the blockchain mining space, and what are some things that you guys would be able to do with that technology that you guys wouldn't have otherwise done at inception when you guys started about a decade ago?
Yeah, so obviously all anyone and everyone can talk about is AI right now. And Nvidia and obviously Tesla are basically the two companies that are holding up the S&P 500 right now. Nvidia obviously with their big focus on the AI chip market. There was a hosting provider called Applied that was initially hosting Bitcoin miners that then signed a deal a couple of weeks ago for about $186 million AI deal. Their stock rallied by about 172% in 2 weeks and is up like over 369% since year to date. And I think that's because obviously everyone is looking for sort of the next big NVIDIA, the next sort of AI proxy play, and infrastructure is certainly where it's at, because all of this AI compute needs servers and infrastructure and security and cooling for their chips, right? So, and this is something that Hut started thinking about well beyond this AI bull run, because our CEO, Jamie Leverton, her background is she spent like 20 years at IBM transforming data centers. And so what's really interesting about companies like Hut is, and what's unique about AI compute is that AI is a lot less latency sensitive. So that means that there's sort of like a different class of data center that can fit AI. And what that class of data center is cheap power, cooling, and infrastructure, versus like the traditional like Amazon Web Services of the world. Those are data centers that have a lot of bells and whistles and different security requirements for like traditional cloud computing. And so I think, again, we're Hut8, what we're really focused on over the next sort of, 12 to 18 months is, number one, we already started buying data centers in Canada in January of 2022. And we have clients right now using A40s for generative AI text to image modeling. And then again, we're in the middle of this merger with a company south of the border, and it comes with a tremendous power portfolio. And so looking at, how can we take advantage of our sort of geographic diversification into like various cheap power markets, plus being, very good at scaling data infrastructure, understanding cooling systems, and then having tremendous relationships with NVIDIA, like our and also TSMC. So that's sort of like the next evolution of where Hut is going, and where I think the market is demanding more ideas as to how can we play in this AI space. Again, we're already kind of doing it, but that's a major focus for us moving forward, because it's a lot easier as a miner who's got access to cheap power and understands how this infrastructure is separate from mining, which we do, to stand up infrastructure fast and at a cheaper price point than like a hyperscaler would. And again, that's just high level, something that we're really excited about. And so I'm talking about it on all our spaces, because I think everyone's looking for the next AI stock, and that's a theme that I think we're gonna crush.
Sue, and would AI also help facilitate things like green energy and renewable energy? I understand that currently within the mining infrastructure space globally, there's a shift for most of the power outage and usage for miners. It's sort of this shift to renewable energy and things of that nature. And here in America, there's sort of this jawboning from the Fed and people in high places that, oh, mining takes up so much energy,
Mm-hmm.
harmful to the planet, and all those things. So if you can answer that question and also sort of clear up those misstatements that certain people say about mining and how it's quote unquote harmful to the environment and things of that nature. And then
Yeah,
after that, we'll go on over to Will.
for sure. Yeah, so there's certainly a lot of FUD that's coming out of different parts of the political arena in the US. Luckily, so a couple weeks ago, Biden proposed a 30% tax on miners. And luckily, that proposal was abolished, which is great. And I think, again, the actual amount of renewables that are powering the total Bitcoin network right now is closer to something like 56-ish percent. And that's solar, hydro, wind. And I think what's really unique about miners, that a lot of, again, sort of the media forgets to even look at or focus on, is the fact that we are incredibly incentivized to use cheap power. And one of the problems with renewable grids, and why miners are a good partner for renewable grids in the transition to more renewable energy, is that the grid needs to be balanced at all times. But But with renewables, when you're looking at like solar or wind, oftentimes there will be a lot of intermittency issues. And so for a renewable grid operator to have a 24/7 off taker of demand, so someone that, if there's not a lot of demand right now on your grid, miners can just power up and use it to mine Bitcoin or whatever. Or if there's a ton of demand on the grid and the grid looks like it's about to get congested, miners can easily power back down and help them balance the grid. And so again, miners, we look at ourselves as a complement to renewable grid operators, as a partner in the transition to renewables. Now, why the media has hopped on it, miners being incredibly pollutive. I mean, look, there's a lot of theories out there, i.e., some concern around the U.S. dollar losing its position globally as a means of trade, and so therefore, a lot of politicians trying to effectively abolish Bitcoin and making it very difficult for Bitcoin to survive in the U.S. because it's technically an alternative currency. So again, there's a bunch of things that people are surmising as to why this FUD exists, but the reality is we're not as pollutive as the media is making out to be. The head of the Texas ERCOT grid, Brad, I believe his last name is Jones, actually came out and said that miners are a complement to the grid because, again, we help with load balancing, which is incredibly important for grids to stay up and running and successful. So yeah, that's my little TED talk there.
Love it, Sue. Love it. Will's outlook. Go on ahead, brother.
No, I was just kind of listening. I really liked the conversation a lot. I actually worked with Google for a while on their data centers, 5 layers thick. I was kind of oversaw, I believe like 6 sites over here on the West Coast as far as construction went and stuff like that. So I've seen like the full build on data centers and stuff like that. I think like things have come a long ways and stuff like that since inception. I love how politicians tend to be electricians, tend to be, certified electricians, understand electricity very well. They come in and tell people to use electric cars, but they tell them, hey, mining's not okay, it uses too much electricity. They also utilize, the current structure as far as our electric power plants when they could really move into something like nuclear, which would be massively, massively better as far as utilization. So I really I kind of I don't know. I don't know why people listen to them. I just don't on a lot of those aspects. But yeah, I think mining as a whole is great, and I think that mining can succeed. But I also look at it like this: when you talk about, not you, but when people talk about renewables and how we can be green with mining, it is very true. The scenario though is that a lot of people don't understand is like when you're talking about mining, if you want to be renewable, let's say you want to go solar or air or whatever, there's a lot of upfront cost. Whereas if you want less upfront cost, you just go straight out the grid, right? Straight out the power grid or whatnot, and then your upfront cost is less, but your overtime cost is more, and so on and so forth. So if you have the upfront cost, I think it's definitely possible to be green, like 100% green. While as if you don't, I think a lot of people moved more towards electric. Yeah, but at the same time, um, while I like data centers, I don't like them. I don't like the centralization of them personally. I think like things, working out as everybody kind of controlling the grid as a whole is a much better approach, and that's why I like Bitcoin, because it's immutable. It's not able to be stopped essentially. So from that aspect, that's why I like Bitcoin specifically out of every other asset. I just want to kind of throw that in there to kind of complement what you were saying in a sense,
Totally.
with mining.
All right, awesome. In case you guys are new here to these spaces, we are Because Bitcoin, and we host content here on Twitter and also YouTube throughout the week, featuring a variety of guests. And we're over here speaking with Sue from Hut8 Mining. We're talking about all things Bitcoin. We're talking about some AI, tech, macro. And if you guys are enjoying this conversation, feel free to follow us. And we'll be providing a lot more content like this over the coming months and years. So if you guys want to come on up and have any questions for the panel, feel free to hit that request button. We'll bring you right up. We have one person requesting. I'll go ahead and bring them up. So, just let us know once you're connected and feel free to ask your question, brother. Zing, what's going on, brother?
Hey, hold on. I'm just connecting. Hold on. Hey, guys. Thanks for hosting the space. Can everybody hear me?
You're good, man. What's going on,
Hey,
brother?
I just, Sue, Canadian here, huge shareholder. Just had a couple quick questions for you. In terms of the merger, I'm not sure if it's been answered yet, but when do you anticipate being complete, and what are the benefits of this merger for Hut8 overall?
Yeah. So the benefits of this merger for Hut 8, again, as we go south of the border, we have a huge geographic diversification and uptick in terms of our power portfolio. So again, having a massive pipeline of power to put it towards mining, hosting, or again, the high performance compute and AI infrastructure space. Um, we if we get through this merger, it would also make us eligible for the Russell 2000 indices, which Marathon and Riot are already in. And the significance of that is a lot of pensions and institutions build their mandates off of that indice. So if you're in the indice, it's almost like you sort of have this class of auto buyers of your stock. Another thing is that it increases our mix of renewables, so more solar, more wind in our power mix. The team is also like they're beasts. They are absolute infrastructure scaling beasts, so they are incredibly good at standing up infrastructure at scale. And Mike Ho, one of the co-founders of US Bitcoin Corp, all he has been doing is studying AI for the past 8 months. So those are some of the things that we really like about this merger and why we thought it made a lot of sense. And then in terms of timing, so we're in the middle, like when you do a merger as a Canadian company south of the border, you have to go through an approval process with the SEC. And so basically what it is you go back and forth with this letter writing process. So we're on the second round of letter writing with the SEC right now. They wrote us a letter asking questions, and then we obviously write them a letter back answering their questions. So far, our legal team thinks that the round of questions they've been asking are relatively benign, so we're not really seeing any sort of negative narratives being threaded. And again, we're already NASDAQ listed, so it's like we've already gone through the compliance lobotomy to get on the NASDAQ. So again, we're feeling good, but again, when we close this is contingent on sort of how this SEC process goes. But again, we're feeling good about it, and that's sort of the most I can say about it right now.
Okay, well, that sounds good. And then just a quick question. I wanted to see what your feedback is on Gary Gensler's attack on Coinbase and Binance, and what you feel will come out of that in the end.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is Coinbase hasn't shut down their staking as a service platform yet. I mean, I know right now it's about 3% of their total revenues, but Brian Armstrong was on a panel a couple of days ago and he basically said, look, until we go through this court process, like I'm doing me, bro. And so I think that's interesting because I think where Coinbase is coming from is that they filed an S1 that the SEC approved, but the SEC is now coming back and saying, well, if you filed an S1, that means that you're shilling securities. But then they're like, but bro, you didn't provide me a framework or parameters and you approved me. So like, what are you saying? So anyhow, I I I think it's interesting. We'll see what happens. I love that Bitcoin has been resilient AF throughout this entire process. Obviously, some of the altcoins like Solana have sold off. I mean, I'm still hodling Solana because I think that's a good ecosystem. But so yeah, TBD. But I think that Coinbase has a pretty strong case here in terms of why they're doing what they're doing, based on what was approved by the same SEC that's now suing them. So.
Okay, cool. Thanks for coming on today, and I appreciate the time. I'll step down.
Thanks for coming on out, brother. If anybody else wants to come on in and join the conversation, feel free to do so. And if you guys are enjoying the conversation, once again, Feel free to follow us and turn on bell notice. We post real-time data across all global financial markets. And if you guys are interested in getting to know us a bit more, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter. All those links are in our bio. So, yeah, Will's Outlook, what's going on, brother?
Okay, so I have a little bit of a tough question, but I have also a statement. I like that you mentioned the Nasdaq. That's really good. You guys are eyeballing that, looking to get into that. You going to use this merger as a door opening to get into that. I like
Sorry.
that
No,
a
no,
lot.
we're already on the Nasdaq, which is why,
Oh, you're oh
we've been listed on the Nasdaq since 2021, but that's like helpful for us, right? Because we already had to go through that regulatory process to get there.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then and I've looked at Marathon and Riot. They both look really good. So I mean, in comparison, like it sounds like you guys are heading the right direction. Outside of that, like I guess what would be the scenario that the deal doesn't go through? Let's say the SEC doesn't approve of it or whatnot. What is your guys' position there, or how will you be repositioning if that ended up happening?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And again, this is not me publicly disclosing anything or giving any outlook, but there is optionality in the sense that, worst case scenario, let's say if the SEC um, doesn't look like they're going to approve anytime soon, we can still get this deal done as a Canadian listed company. And the only thing that would change is that we wouldn't be American listed, aka we wouldn't be eligible for those indices, but we can still get this deal done here in Canada and stay listed on the Nasdaq, stay listed on that exchange, which is obviously very, very important and incredibly liquid. So yeah, there's certainly still optionality here for us. It's not sort of do or die.
Cool.
Yeah,
I
go
had a
ahead, man.
question actually
No need,
around.
no need to raise your hand, brother. You're a co-host, man. Always,
Gotcha,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
I forgot it was a co-host for a second. I realized I got those special privileges. I'm gonna take full advantage of it from now on.
Go ahead,
But yeah,
brother.
great conversation so far. So I'm just kind of looking at Hub 8. It seems that you guys are leveraging heavily NVIDIA, and it seems for both the GPU mining and also for the AI high performance computing. I kind of like to know like if like what makes NVIDIA so special, and is it the same machine that you use for both purposes, or they like specialize for mining and then specialize for AI computing? Can you kind of touch on like how you guys using the NVIDIA stack?
Yeah. So we have A40s, which is an older chip we do have clients using right now for generative AI text to image modeling. And then in 2021, we started tinkering around with GPU chips in general, but that was more for proof of work GPU based networks. So before Ethereum went proof of stake, we were mining Ethereum using those NVIDIA GPU chips. But then, yeah, like we've got obviously there's only so much I can say publicly, but we feel like we're pretty strategically positioned to the NVIDIA chip supply chain. And in terms of why their NVIDIA is such a big deal, I mean, so far it's just they've got really like the industry leading chips specifically for AI compute. So condensed, just really industry leading chips in silicon. So yeah, that's sort of why all the fuss about NVIDIA. Yeah. And guys, sorry, I do have to roll in like 1 minute if there's any more questions.
Yeah. One of our analysts is a bit shy to come on up here, Sue, and he'd like to know, if I'm a new individual to the markets, right, and I feel like using some of my liquidity to have exposure to a miner, right, and there's a ton of names, right, and of course. With our conversation, I can make the case. You guys are doing a lot of innovative things, and I do believe you guys have the first mover advantage in a lot of things regarding mining. But how would Hut 8 separate itself, or rather, how is Hut 8 separating itself from the competition?
Yeah. So Hut 8 for sure is differentiated because of we've got sort of different lines of business revenue. So like I said, in a post-merger world, we're picking up a hosting line of revenue and this sort of we work white glove mining services business. But really, like, the killer app, in my opinion, about Hut 8 is that it's effectively a call option on the growth of the AI space. It's a call option on the growth of Bitcoin because obviously we hodl Bitcoin, we do mine some Bitcoin, but the moves that we're making in the AI infrastructure space, none of our competitors are set up to benefit or or as far along the game in terms of infrastructure that's already stood up as we are. So that's how I pitch Hut 8. It's a call option on the future price of Bitcoin and a call option on the growth of the AI space. And I think we're trading at like $2 right now. So that's, I think, what's the most differentiated about Hut 8 for sure, in my opinion. And
Before you go, what's your guys' market
my
cap?
DMs are also always open if anyone ever wants to chat. And sorry, what was your question about market cap?
I just wanted to know, yeah, what was your total market cap?
Last time I checked, it was like 569 mil.
Okay, all right, not too bad. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Man, that's actually really that's actually really intriguing. There's a lot of these vaporware alts that have, like, significant more valuation than that. So I'll definitely be checking that out. But
Nice.
anyway, Sue, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your Friday to come and talk shop with us. God bless you, your family, your friends, and all your coworkers. It's been a pleasure having you up, and we look forward to having you guys at Hut 8 on one of our spaces, hopefully on a YouTube video throughout the summertime.
You
I think
bet.
that'd be pretty cool. And yeah, where can people find out more about all things Hut 8 before
Yeah.
we close up the space?
Yeah, so I'm at Big Suey on Twitter. My DMs are always open. And then also the Hut 8 mining page at Hut 8 mining is where you can find us. Thank you so much for having me on, and talk to you soon, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sue. And for our audience, thank you so much for supporting us and showing up today for our show. If you guys are interested in what we've produced today and want to see what we're all about, we are Because Bitcoin. We're a global financial media startup, and we do shows on Twitter Spaces and also on YouTube throughout the week. So feel free to give us a follow and turn on bell notifs to keep up with real-time market news, and also to keep up with all of our shows and all the things going on internally here. Because Bitcoin, we host shows with many infrastructure players building in the crypto space, Bitcoin space, and also the U.S. equity market. We've had a lot of fund managers and key opinion leaders and things of that regard. So really everything global financial markets. So if you guys want to support us, feel free to subscribe to our newsletter as well. It would really mean the world to us. All the links to how you can subscribe to our newsletter are pinned up in our bio, and also feel free to check out our Discord. There's a 1 week free trial going on, and that's more trading oriented. And we usually have morning and afternoon calls right at the bell opening and bell close for the equity markets. And yeah, thank you all so much. Your support means the world to us. And we'll see you all again for our Monday shows. So take care. God bless you, and have a good weekend and rest of your Friday. Peace out. Take care. And goodbye. Thank you, Will and Dow Chemist, for helping me out for the speaker panel. Looking forward to having you guys on next week. So just going to do this real quick. Later, guys.
Thanks for having us, man. Later.